Conan's got a multitude of building tricks and tips, but to be honest, they're all useless without that one magical element, inspiration. It's the intangible flavour behind every good build, and without it, things don't really turn out right. Today I'm going to attempt to make a guide on how to get inspiration for Conan builds. I'm going to give you an idea of what works for me and what will hopefully work for you, but if you have other methods, do share them in the comments below. So, let's begin with the easiest ways to get inspiration in the basic tier. First up is a resource that many people already know about, and that is Pinterest. It's a great website where you can essentially search almost any topic and gather a wide array of images and videos from across the web. It's designed to help you build ideas, and let you create your own lists of saved content to browse later on. What you search on Pinterest is entirely up to you. It can be very specific, for example a rustic medieval English townhouse, or it can be something general like big castle. The website is great at returning a large amount of quality results. I've used it quite a few times in the past, and it's a great way to get quick and easy inspiration. Secondly, in a similar vein, Google Images or whichever search engine you use. This is a very similar concept to Pinterest of course, but the results may not always be as pertinent. I find that Pinterest gives you a good variety of things that are generally quite relevant to your search, whereas Google might give you some things that you're not necessarily looking for, or may return multiple images of the same thing if you're a bit too specific. It's good in a pinch, I've used it a few times, but Pinterest is probably a better option. Finally, in the basic category is Reddit and forums, or generally any focused social media. That can include Facebook groups, following specific accounts on X and other stuff like that. It's a bit less specified as it encourages browsing as opposed to targeted searching, but also introduces a natural variety that can give you inspiration and ideas that you might not have considered before. Real-world architecture is always a good source, though if you're looking specifically for Conan stuff, the Conan Exiles and Conan base build subreddits can both work well, though are a little quiet at times. For me, this method can be very hit or miss. Sometimes I see great stuff that gives me a ton of ideas, other time absolutely nothing. This might work better for some, it's a method worth considering for sure. So with that, let's move on to the second category, and that is some more advanced sources of inspiration. Firstly, other games. This one's pretty simple, I've done it lots and I'm sure a lot of other builders have. You're playing a different game, be that Skyrim, Bioshock, something like that, and you see a building you like. It might not even be a building, it might be a design or a sort of feeling about something. Sometimes that's inspiration enough, though if it is building, you may want to have a look around and kind of log the layout in your head, so then you can build it in Conan. You may want to do a one-to-one recreation, or you might want to just take the spirit of the building and put it into something else. Borrowing from other games has the huge benefit of being able to actually look around and explore these areas to see how they feel to be inside, which is a massive step up from just researching images. So this can be a viable and valuable method of gaining inspiration. Next, back to the real world, real architectural styles. This works to both give you initial inspiration or help you to further inform ideas when you already have a rough concept in mind. Say for example you want to build with Aquilonian and Argosian, you'd probably want to research some classical and neoclassical buildings, and hopefully inspiration would take you and let you coalesce those buildings together to create something of your own. I've done a few videos on how to build real-world styles before, and admittedly, they do require a good bit of research to fully comprehend, but it's really worth looking at to get both general and targeted inspiration. Lastly, for this category, replication. When people are learning to build, I always recommend just copying what other people do. If you want to learn to build things, then building already successful structures is really good for discovering how things work. The same can be true for garnering inspiration. Sometimes if I'm having a particularly dry day in terms of inspiration, I'll build something from a game or an image, or sometimes even just my own past designs. Not only does this kind of get the creative juices flowing, but it can give you a good idea of what sort of thing you're looking for. Replicating designs that others have made can give you a jump start on that initial hurdle of knowing what to build, which, to be honest, is probably the hardest part, and it gets the ideas flowing a bit more freely. If you're struggling, I recommend this method highly. So with that, let's move to the final category, and that is the more niche methods. Firstly, your local area. No, there won't be any touch grass memes. Depending, of course, on where you live, you might be able to get inspiration by just looking outside or taking a walk. That's not just the buildings, but the areas, the space, all sorts of things that can get your mind turning. If you live in England, depending on where you are, that might not be as successful. Our more modern buildings are pretty uninspiring, but older buildings especially are a great source. It's also worth looking up historical buildings near you, especially if you can get to them. Images are great, but seeing buildings in person can be a great source of inspiration. It's highly dependent on where you live and your surroundings, but I find this tactic sometimes works. Secondly, music, books, and visual media. Visual media is a pretty easy one. It's a similar concept to games or image research. Take a look at the structures in your favourite shows. Sometimes you'll be able to grab some inspiration from them. Books are a similar idea, though of course it depends how good your imagination is. Books can be an incredible source of inspiration, especially for trying to translate something from the written world into an actual building you can walk through. Music is probably the most niche one here and honestly might not work for everyone. Sometimes when I'm building, I'll listen to specific music that suits the vibe of what I'm trying to create. Take for example my recent spooky mansion build. If I'm watching YouTube videos on my other monitor, it kind of keeps me outside the build looking in. However, if I pop on some spooky songs, I find I get a lot more immersed in the build, which helps generate inspiration for both construction and decoration. The same can be true in reverse, in that certain music might inspire you to think of certain concepts or atmospheres or designs that will influence your ideas for builds. For example, I planned, built, scripted and shot the entirety of Season 3 of Settlers whilst mostly listening to 3 different songs. Those were Zuravi by Agori, Happy House by Ghostbath, and Through the Noose of Existence by Drowning the Light. Without those songs setting the tone, I don't think the season would have hit the notes I wanted it to. Music, books and visual media can all be incredible sources of inspiration, but are perhaps a bit more specific to you and how you think. Finally, the off-the-cuff method. This is definitely not for everyone, and to be honest, I don't fully recommend it as it's incredibly inconsistent. Sometimes, if I've got absolutely zero inspiration, I'll just start building. This really is the definition of a feast or famine method, as sometimes inspiration hits and you end up with something really cool. Other times, you get trash. This method has the benefit of no real structure, so different opportunities can open up that will help you get some good ideas. The downside is that this method has no real structure, so you can end up building something absolutely awful. It's really not something I recommend to everyone, but as a dire straits option, it can sometimes work. Inspiration is weird, it's kind of an unknowable quantity. You can't point to it, but you know when it's there. Without it, any creative endeavour is pretty much doomed to fail. I've been dry on inspiration countless times over the years, and unfortunately it's a natural part of the process. But hopefully, this video can give you a bit of a kickstart in gaining your own inspiration if you find yourself in the same position. Thank you for watching, and of course a massive thanks to our wonderful, esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. Making a guide on how to get inspiration is not the easiest topic to cover, but hopefully you guys can get some value out of it. Again, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon.